Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this from. My name is Fanuel Wendy, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Stories and Science at the STEM Advocacy Institute, SAI, based in Boston. Very excited today to have two speakers in our Journeys in Science fall series. These are recorded sessions, and we'll post these videos up both on our journal storiesandscience.org, and also on our YouTube channel as well at STEM Advocacy Institute. And the point for these chats were really providing an opportunity for us to engage with scientists from different stages who can tell us their stories in science as they are developing, both the good, the bad, and everything in between. Okay, so these are fun conversations, peering conversations, if you will. 20 minutes for each speaker to talk, and then we'll have some Q&A right afterwards, but you can really ask questions at any time. That's the key point. Drop it in the chat or raise your hand. I will try to make sure that I point to you and ask you away. And our first speaker for today, and before I say that, this is being recorded, just heads up on that. And our first speaker today, really excited to have Anika Nabila with us, a graduate student, G4 at Cornell. And I really want to thank Chris for connecting myself with Anika when we were looking for speakers. And I think your story is very inspiring. And I don't want to give away too much, okay? I'll let you do the honors for that. So Anika, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Anika. I am a fourth-year PhD candidate, like Fanuel just said, at Weill Cornell. So that's the med school for Cornell that's in Manhattan right now. And so I will start off by just telling you a little bit about my research, and I will move on to talking about how I kind of got into science and how I've gotten to this point. So right now, I am working on early life adversity and understanding how early life adversity and epigenetic changes, which I'll explain soon, can affect anxiety following early life adversity. So when we think about the different environments that we all experience, our brains allow us to adapt to it based on the situation that we're in. But sometimes when you have chronic exposure to a stressful event or a negative environmental condition, it can affect a lot of different types of negative behaviors. So especially with early life adversity, when you're exposed to, child abuse or parental neglect, you tend to have greater incidences of neuropsychiatric disorders, as well as other types of disorders, so a lot of metabolic and cardiovascular disorders. And so there's kind of a pretty big spectrum of things that can go wrong based on, whether or not you are in a negative environment. And so we focus primarily on, well, one of the things our lab focuses on, our lab does a lot of different things, is trying to understand the epigenetic basis of early life adversity. So we use 3 different models in our lab, and they are basically stressful events that occur at different points of development, because the environments that you're in and especially during development is really important for proper brain development. So when things are, kind of going wrong as your brain is, kind of starting to wire itself and learning to, I guess, deal with things, it can really affect the way your behavior is in the future when a lot of this development kind of stops. And so during our models, what we see is, like in humans, the mice that we work with also show an anxiety phenotype. And we measure this based on a behavioral test called elevated plus maze. And just to give you an example of how this works is that, so you put the mice on a maze that's shaped like a plus, which is why it's called elevated plus maze. And you have closed arms that are kind of encapsulated by walls. And you also have open arms that are kind of just like platforms. And the way the mice naturally work is they prefer the closed environments because they feel safer in it. And so they'll generally, if you put them in this maze, they'll spend more time in the closed arms. And you use that as a measure of anxiety behavior. And what we see is actually, compared to normal mice, the ones that don't undergo any sort of early life adversity, the mice that do tend to spend more time in the closed arms, indicating an anxiety phenotype. So we're kind of interested in seeing what happens in the brain to get to this anxiety phenotype. And we specifically work with a part of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is involved in a lot of different things. It's involved generally, that people mostly know about, is memory and learning, but it's also involved in the regulation of anxiety. And so I specifically work with one part of the hippocampus that's been implicated in anxiety circuitry. And what we see is in the cells in the hippocampus, they undergo this specific epigenetic change. So what do I mean by epigenetics? Generally, when you look at DNA, you know, your DNA is what kind of is the blueprint for who you are, right? And it's made up of 4 bases, A, G, T, C, and they kind of bind together to form the helix that kind of is the code for everything that you are. So generally, whatever changes happen in DNA, these are known as mutations, are what you are stuck with for the rest of your life. That's it, there are no changes to it. But what's been found in recent years is that actually you can have reversible changes that happen on your DNA. So it's called epigenetics because it means above genetics. So you can have changes on these specific sites in your gene. And I look at something called DNA methylation, where you have a methyl group added to a CpG site. And a CpG site just refers to a C next to a G in your DNA. And so this is reversible. You can change it, you can add more, you can get rid of it. It just depends on your environment. And so we're kind of interested in seeing, how does this change in DNA methylation that happens after early life adversity affect the behavior that we're seeing? So how are they linked together? And so you might have learned about the central dogma of biology, where your DNA, think of it as like the blueprint for maybe a house, let's say. You can think of your RNA as a scaffold. So it's basically a readout of your DNA. And from that, from the RNA, you make your protein. So think of it as your final house. So I'm interested in seeing, how does a change in DNA methylation here affect my RNA and my protein? And when these things change, how does it affect the way my neurons, so the brain cells, communicate with each other, how they kind of connect with each other to affect the way you're showing your anxiety phenotype. So that's just a general overview of the work that I do. So how did I get to this point? I think I started really thinking about being a scientist in high school, but my story, I think, really starts in elementary school. So after I moved to the US, so I'm from Bangladesh, I'm an immigrant. I went to a school in Philly, in West Philadelphia, not born and raised there, but I think of it as one of my homes. I went to elementary school there for a few years, and when I was there, during 4th grade, I was recruited to a science club. That was after school. So school was very big on extracurriculars. And in the science club, we kind of did a bunch of different experiments. And I actually have a very specific memory of being in this hall. And my elementary school teacher, who was leading the club, got us all popsicle sticks. And we all ate the popsicles. And then we used the popsicle sticks to build cars with mouse traps. And we raced them in the hallway here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. So we raced them in the hallway here, and I have like very specifically remember that fun memory of science. And one of the things we did as a part of the science club was take part in the George Washington Carver Science Fair. So this was a citywide science fair in Philly, and we, I think, studied how surface area affects mass retention and things like that. So I just remember building aluminum foil boats and putting pennies on it to see how many pennies it would hold until it sunk. And that was our science fair project. And we presented it at the George Washington Carver Science Fair, and we won 2nd place. So I have that memory of my earliest exposure to science. And even though I kind of was doing science from, let's say, elementary school, I don't think I really wanted to be a scientist for real until I got to high school. In between, I wanted to be a lot of different things. I wanted to be an astronaut at one point. I wanted to be an artist. I think my favorite thing I wanted to be was probably a photographer for National Geographic. And I specifically wanted to be a photographer who photographed volcanoes. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to photograph volcanoes. But I think once I got to middle school, I actually really wanted to be a professional writer. And that was kind of what I wanted to be up until maybe 12th grade when I started thinking, no, I actually really want to get a PhD in science. So I really started enjoying or thinking about doing research in 9th grade during my biology class. And I found that what I really enjoyed about being in school was doing hands-on work. And that was, I think, like very important for me. And I found that kind of love in my science lab classes when I was working with microscopes. I was looking at things under the on slides. I was doing like paper chromatography. It was a lot of different experiments, and I really, really enjoyed doing that work. And so when I got to 12th grade, one of our high school teachers wanted us to do a market study of our future careers. And I kind of started thinking about what can I do in science. And I looked at MDs, I looked at PhDs. At one point, I thought I would maybe do an MD PhD. I got to college and realized I would not do that. But that was kind of where I started seriously thinking about doing a PhD in science. And I didn't even know what a PhD really meant. I kind of just thought I wanted to go into research, and it seems like a PhD is what you wanted to do if you want to go into research. So it was kind of just like a black wall for me. So when I entered college, I came in as a biology major. And so another thing I want to mention about my journey into college is that my parents are not from here, as you know. And so when I was applying to college, I kind of didn't have anybody who could direct me to any of this stuff. No one in my family has a PhD, no one has a career in science. So I didn't really know what any of it meant. I kind of came in with, I guess, maybe an optimistic idea of what it meant to be a scientist. And so I really I didn't really have a community or a support system that could help me do the things I wanted to do. So once I got to college, I went to school at Macaulay Honors College, and specifically at City College. I kind of tried to just look for, people who could help me do that right away. And one of the things I did was start to email a bunch of professors to see if I can work in their labs, because I wanted to see early on, do I really want to go into science? Like, the idea that I have of being a scientist, is this what it's like? And so I kind of emailed a bunch of different people, but there was one specific person who I really wanted to work with, and that was my undergrad PI. And PI, by the way, means principal investigator. And so I kind of emailed her, and I never got a response. I think I waited almost an entire semester. And at that point, I was kind of just like badgering the people in her lab about if she was going to take students. So if you are interested into going into science and you want to do research and you're in college maybe, I don't see, even if you're in high school, you probably could just cold email a bunch of people whose labs you're interested in. And if they don't reply, it's okay. People will ignore you. That's why you just keep hounding them. And at one point, someone will reply and give you a chance. And so I think it's really important to be able to do that. So in undergrad, in my sophomore year of college, I started working in Dr. Chris Lee's lab. That's Chris right there. I worked on this gene called APL1. This is similar to the APP gene that's implicated in Alzheimer's disease. And so we don't really know a lot about APL1 or APP. And so we were kind of interested in seeing, what does this protein actually do? And so I worked with something called C. elegans. So they're like basically microscopic worms. And I looked at, their development, their learning phenotypes, their egg laying, because that's also another part of development. And that was kind of the work that I did in undergrad. And so, like I said before, I didn't really have anybody to help me get into college. So when I got to college, I tried to find as many people as I could who could help me with grad school. So one of the things I did my junior year was apply for the City College Fellowship Program. And this was a program geared towards people who are interested in getting PhDs. And I think that was really, really helpful for me because I honestly think I would have struggled a lot more with my applications if I didn't have help from these people. And I think it just like helped me kind of learn not only more about scientific science PhDs, but also about humanities, because this was a interdisciplinary program. And so, you know, I wasn't just limited to just science. I knew about other sorts of PhDs that you could do. I also was part of the STEM Career Development Institute, where I did a bunch of workshops about like, you know, how to like market myself. And through this program, I actually got an internship at the New York Stem Cell Foundation. And this is the place I worked at in between my sophomore year, or sorry, my junior year and my senior year. And it was one of the coolest things I did. So these are images I took. I'm really proud of them. I think they're the most beautiful science thing I've ever done. I wish I could show you guys a recent stain that I've done. It's called a Golgi Stain. If you've never seen a Golgi Stain, I think you should look it up. It's very cool. It's very beautiful. I wanted to show you guys, but I didn't have a picture of it on my computer. But I basically work with induced pluripotent stem cells here, and induced pluripotent stem cells are basically, you take adult stem cells and you turn them into acting like, you take adult cells, any sort of adult cell, and you can program them back to act like stem cells. And then you can basically take those cells that act like stem cells and make them into whatever cell type you want. And so I made a bunch of different cell types. And it was one of the coolest things I did. And so I kind of, through these two programs, I knew right away that I really enjoy doing science and I enjoy doing it full time. And so when I got to my senior year, I was like ready to apply to grad school. And that is how I ended up in my current lab. So like I said, I'm in Cornell right now. I love my lab a lot. They're great people. We have a lot of fun together. I also want to direct your attention to this picture. We're all dressed as mouse models in the lab. So we have a bunch of different mouse models. This is a computer mouse because she does a lot of computational work. I was an exercise mouse because I was working on a project dealing with memory and exercise. She is a spatially impaired mouse because she worked with spatial navigation and things like that. We have someone who was doing like, was a pregnant mom, because we look at like how pregnancy, things that during pregnancy can affect methylation. We had a fiber mouse, so like that's how we record from brains sometimes. You know, we had like smart mice, dominant mice, because we work with social hierarchy sometimes. And then obviously the anxious mouse and the health check mouse. So it's like just a really fun thing we did, and I wanted to draw your attention to it because it was great. So that's kind of how I've gotten to this point in my life. And I think a lot of it is because of the people I was around. I had really great mentors throughout, I think, all aspects of my scientific career, you know, starting from, you know, Miss Dixon, who recruited me into my elementary school science club, to, you know, even in high school, my, you know, biology teachers, to college, my undergrad PI, and all the professors who helped me in the fellowship that I was in, to now when I have so many different mentors in addition to my current PI. So I think a lot of the science that I do is really informed by the people I'm around and the people I'm mentored by. And so if there's anything I want you to take away from this, it's that there will be a lot of failures, especially in the beginning. And I can give you an example of that. I just mentioned that I was working on a project with exercise and memory. I worked on that project all of last year, and the science wasn't going anywhere, so I had to scrap it. I just scrapped it literally the week we were shutting down for the pandemic. And so I basically started from scratch when we got back to lab. And my project is entirely new now. I don't know where I'm going. It's my 4th year. I'm a little stressed out. But this happens. You just have to follow where the science goes. And then I think one of the things I learned in grad school is to ask a lot of questions. I think, especially when I was an undergrad, I didn't know how to ask questions, and I felt stupid about asking questions. But I've gotten very comfortable with asking questions and straight up saying, I don't know. And I think that's important, because you're never going to be the smartest person in the room. And even if you are, you probably don't know everything. So I try to ask as many questions as I can. And if people ask me questions and I don't know, I say, I don't know, let me look it up and I will get back to you. And like I mentioned, it's really important to find a good mentor. And you really don't even want one mentor, you want multiple mentors. Different mentors will give you different things. My PI, I go to him for science advice, but I have other mentors within the department who I go to about, what can I do if I want to maybe go into a specific avenue of research, or maybe I want to go into a different career. Sometimes you just need someone else to talk to when you're frustrated. And so it's really nice to have someone else to talk to. And it doesn't have to be faculty. It could be postdocs. So there are people who've already gotten their PhDs. It could be other grad students who are older than you. You can find mentors in every sort of avenue, every sort of aspect of your career and your environment. So I think it's really important to make those connections. And also, yeah, of course, the people you're around are just as important as the work you do. So I think a lot of my enjoyment in science comes from the people I'm around. I think I've been really fortunate to have been part of labs that have been full of really great people who I'm really close to. And I'm really thankful for that. And lastly, it's to ask for help when you need it. I think I struggled with this a lot in the beginning, especially at the start of grad school, when I felt like didn't really belong in grad school because my background was so different from a lot of people's. A lot of the people I know came to grad school from, they have parents who have higher education, or they have parents who've been in science, so they have some sort of exposure, and I didn't have any of that. And I also came to grad school straight from undergrad, so I felt like I just was lacking in a lot of different ways. But I honestly think because I asked for help from, not only my science peers, but also my friends who aren't in science, it really helped me adjust to grad school and get used to this lifestyle a lot more easily. And I think it's just important to have a good support system, whether it's in science or not. And you should always ask for help. You shouldn't feel badly about asking for help. Yeah, that's kind of my story. If you have questions, go for it. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anika. Lots to digest in there. But the first question, Alvin Carter asked, I think you probably addressed it slightly. Did you need to get a master's degree first? And this is actually a good question we get a lot as well.
You don't need to get a master's degree. I think a lot of people will either get a master's degree because maybe sometimes they don't know if they want to go into a specific type of research or not, or people have different goals. Sometimes people don't necessarily want to pursue a research career. They want to go into industry. It really depends. It's not necessary to have a master's degree. I didn't. I came straight to a PhD program. Some people, will take time off. They'll work as a technician in the lab for 2 years before they come to grad school. So definitely not. You don't need to have a master's degree to come to grad school, but it might help you and decide if you want to come to grad school. So it's something to worth consider.
Yeah. I think, it's a distribution. I think everybody's coming to grad school from different points of, the training. So definitely do your homework and look at the different programs and what they need you to sort of have beforehand. Most don't really need, especially in the bioscience.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think one of the most important parts is just research experience, and having, at least a year or two under your belt of experience.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if there are any other questions. I do have a few here and there. And Alan, you can ask a question as well, by the way.
I mean, I've been learning. This is so cool. What Anika says, that you can get mentors who are older than you. Also, you can get mentors who are younger than you, because the new things coming out. I was sitting back looking at this presentation like, wow, that's pretty cool. So you can always get advice and thoughts from people who are younger than you as well. One thing I just say on that, my rule of thumb is, if I can't figure it out in 30 minutes, somebody else can. So I'm going to go ask somebody. And that saves me and my team a lot of time. And you can take it, you can say hour, but if you're spending 5-10 hours on something, or days, ask somebody else, because somebody else knows.
Exactly. I think this is a really hard thing to do, asking for help. So Anika, what are your tips, and how helping students like practice this skill, because it is a skill you can develop over time. Going back to your high school days and in early undergrad, what are some things that you wish you had done or did do to help you cultivate that skill?
I will be the first to admit I'm very bad at asking for help. I'm very bad at it. But I think once you get to at least this point, you kind of realize you need to ask people for help. Like at one point you just hit the wall and you're like, I need help. So in undergrad and high school, maybe, like I told you guys, I knew that I didn't have people who could help me with, things like college applications, with figuring out, what do I do if I want to figure out that I want to go into this sort of career. So it was kind of like, if I couldn't find an answer from Google, I needed to go to someone who could help me with that. And so it's kind of just like first having kind of conversations where it's kind of just like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? So it's like not outright asking for someone for help, but asking for their opinion on what you think. And then, once I started applying, like getting close to applying for grad school, I was like, oh, I actually don't know what I'm doing. I really need help. And so I tried to kind of find communities where I knew it was structured to help people do things. So that's why I kind of applied for the fellowship that I was in, where I was like, okay, they're going to teach me how to do a lot of these things. So even if I can't ask for help, I'm going to be in an environment where they're actively trying to teach me these things. So I think it's also very important to be in an environment where you feel like you can ask for help and feel like you can ask any sort of question. So if you feel as though you're not getting that sort of, I guess you're not getting help in the way you need it, you kind of have to just like find other people to help you. And I always feel it's easier for me to ask questions when I think someone won't think I'm stupid. So I think it's just like having a lot of honest communication, and it's hard to admit that you don't know things, and it's hard to say I need help right now. But I really don't have tips, I guess. I think I was just getting comfortable with asking questions, and you have to do that once you get to grad school, because like I said, I didn't have any experience. I had very little experience in undergrad, I think, in terms of research, in terms of a lot of this scientific stuff that I really didn't really know about. So when I got to grad school, I had to ask, a lot of the grad students for help that were in years above me. And, I would say, okay, I have to do this one technique, but I don't know anything about it because I've never done it, and my PI expects me to figure it out, but I don't know where to start. So you ask your friends for help first, right? You go to them, the people you're comfortable with. If they don't have an answer, you go to someone a little bit above, but maybe not as formal, asking a faculty for help. And as you keep doing this, you go up the levels, you get more and more comfortable with asking questions and asking for help. And I think it's just something you have to constantly consciously practice. And at one point you'll get comfortable just saying, I don't know, give me some help.
Yeah, and you said the right thing there. It's a practice, right?
Yeah.
It's a practice. You get better as you practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal. Yeah. Right? If anything, that's the advice. I think I agree with you. You practice, and sometimes you ask the question not, in a way that makes sense, but you'll get better and
Mm-hmm.
better and better, right? So the key is to practice.
Yeah.
I think that was fantastic. I know you're going to be sticking around with us because we're going to get into a journal Q&A towards the end. And a couple extra questions that I do have. But thank you for that journey through your developing story. And so I think there's many more chapters that you're going to be writing very soon. Okay, so super excited to welcome Dr. Alan Arnold as our next speaker. Fun fact, Dr. Arnold had actually wrote a story for our journal. I think 3 years ago. I can't believe time flies this much. Okay, it's so fast.
Yeah, I think it's maybe 4 years ago now. It's a while.
It's a long time, and so I'm excited to. So if you haven't check that out, please search for it. storiesandscience.org. Alan Arnold. You'll find the narrative there. And Dr. Arnold right now is Director of Research Development at MSI STEM Research and Development Consortium, and his experiences are quite diverse. And I'm going to let him take us through a journey through that and through other interesting narratives that he has in store. Dr. Arnold, welcome.
Thank you so much, and Anika. That was fantastic. And Dr. Reed, go ahead and keep doing those pipettes, man. That's love it.
No doctor yet, but thank you.
Oh,
Still
okay,
a
yeah.
graduate student.
Hey, that's fantastic. So I'm gonna tell like if you guys do look at these stories in science, I'm gonna tell kind of the other half of that parallel to that, the more positive side, and some other challenges that I left out. So I want to pose a question to you guys, but if you don't feel comfortable asking, that's fine. Um, in high school? What was your lowest grade point you ever received? Okay, so is it that long ago? Yeah, it's been that long ago. I mean, let's just say like 3.0, probably the lowest 3.0, something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
So imagine, because as you go up in education, you meet some really bright people. So, so my grade point average when I was in 10th grade um, in high school was a 1.8, right? And if you see that, you're like, and I was like, I was one of those smart kids who's like, why do I have to do homework if I know how to do the test? And then my brother, who's an engineer, he said, you can't get to college with that grade point. I'm like, oh, for real? so so then after that, I buckled down and got like between a 3.6 and a 4.0 for the rest of the time in high school. And that was the reason that I was able to get into college, because I was like, yeah, my grade point average is not that good. But I was like, look, you see, I just turned it on. I just actually started doing work, right? And then I was able to get into school. And actually, my brother sent me some stuff from back in the day as my little acceptance letter and all that. I was like, oh, that's so nice. So I didn't have like and I was looking at my science grades. They weren't that good either. So I didn't know that I was going to go towards a path that I want to go to until, because I wanted to be an actor. Fun fact, my name is Alan Abraham Arnold. And so this, funny, well, you may know this MASH. You ever heard of TV show MASH?
I have.
Yeah, so Alan Alda, I was actually named after him, the Alan. And then my father was like, nope, I don't want him to be go all crazy and be an actor. So he changed my middle name to Abraham. So so that's how I got my name. And then my initials are AAA. So there was a they said, this is what you have to get in school. You have to have AAAs. You have to get all A's, and you always have to be prepared, no matter when your name is called. So that was put into me when I was very young. But also like makes you very if you're always prepared, like you're over prepared, and then it makes you a little bit lazy. Or not lazy, but especially in high school and college. Um, so did really well the final 2 years in high school. And I'm sorry I don't have the slides. I went to, I'm from Flint, Michigan. So just in case people are from places that are not necessarily like the highest schools or whatever, it's Flint, Michigan. So it's still that Flint. And it wasn't, the only thing different when I went there, where I lived there versus now is the water. That's the only difference. It's all the same, or even worse. So, so I had a really high grade point average my sophomore and junior year. I'm sorry, junior and senior year. I haven't talked like that in so long. Junior and senior year. That when I got to college, I was like, oh, I'm good, and I was real smart. So I'm like, I did dual enrollment. I took chemistry and public speaking, communications in high school out of college. So the confidence to be able to speak to people was not a problem, because I was like, 17 years old with people who are 30 something, which was old at the time. It's not anymore. It's not old. 30 is not old. So, so I gave the confidence of like, okay, I can speak to people. Then I went to college and got smacked in the face, because I was like, wow, this being the top of my class in the inner city of Flint versus going to, which is 90% African American, to going to my university where it was 10,000 people and 900 were African American, and we were all in one dorm. And ironically, as I look back on it, the dorm was called Bond. I'll just let that sit for a minute. It was that named after a person, but I was just thinking like that was kind of ironic that all the Black people were in one dorm. And so yeah, so again, I got hit again. I had like a 2 point something, and I got academic probation. I was like, oh man. So it's like, all right, let's do it. So I buckled down. Actually started to do my homework. I did my homework, and some of my friends were that I still have now were from undergrad, and that was like 1999. I had my 20-year class reunion last year, and yes, I feel old now. So and so the thing about it is that it is those relationships that you build, right? And so as I was moving along and I got a work study, and this is how I got into science. I wanted to do pre-farm or pharmacy, so I was like, I don't want to do any work. I just want to make a lot of money. So that's not the way to plan your life. That is not the way to plan your life, because it ultimately will not be a good idea. And so I went to a pharmacy and I worked there, and I was like, wow, this is not fun. Like, this is not fun. So one bit of advice I would give to anyone is, and this would be very hard to do if you're younger in your career, is only do things that make you happy. That's it. If it doesn't make you happy, don't do it. If it doesn't if it doesn't go towards your ultimate goal, don't do it. And most people's response is like, what? You got to do stuff that you don't want to do. I don't. Because, and it's not because I don't, if like my boss, people always say, well, what if your boss asks you to do something? Well, we're on the same page, right? So if he asks me to do something, it's going to be going towards what we're trying to do anyway, right? But it just helps you to reduce distractions, right? And keeps you focused. So I was answering phones for the biology department. Biology department doesn't get many phone calls, so I'm just doing my homework and studying. So the department head, the department chair was like, hey, have you ever done research? I'm like, yeah, research is boring. I'm like, I mean, maybe I can be a pharmacist and do research because that makes more money, but I don't want to do research. Like, you don't get paid. You don't get a lot of money in research. Sorry, Nika. Sorry, Chris. So I was like, you don't make a lot of money in research. Why would I do that? And he's like, well, just give it a try. Just give it a try. I'm like, okay. So this is where, I mean, I didn't know if it wouldn't make me happy. I was like, let me just try it. So I tried it, and he gave me a petri dish, and it was E. coli, and I did research on reactive oxygen species and basically the effects of tanning beds. So, if you go to tanning bed, then, you have, you damage your skin, right? And again, what Nick was talking about epigenetics, I felt like I was going back in time. And so you have all these problems, right? And my boss, or my mentor at the time, he said, here, figure it out. And I was like, wow, I've never done research before, and I don't know what I'm doing, but it's cool. So he just let me do whatever I want. So one of the things that I really like is like, for me, is just to I like to have a large imagination, or I have a large imagination. So, and just let me do. And so to fast forward a bit, by the end of my 4 years in laboratory, I was running a lab, published 2 papers or 3 papers, mentoring undergraduate students, high school students, and it was fantastic. So then I had to then of course everyone's like, oh, medical school. Okay, so again, like studying. I mean, I was like, I'm gonna study for this. MCAT, terrible. I mean, I'm not even gonna say the score because you guys are like, what? I don't even know if I want to speak to you. So it was, it was terrible. So I'm like, all right. So I thought about MD PhD as well. And then, so unfortunately, my father got sick when I was an undergraduate. He had multiple myeloma, which is a blood disease. And so with that, I was like, the physician said, there's no research enough right now for us to change the course of what happens. And I was actually in molecular biology, no, medical microbiology at that point. And I was studying like the disease or the infection Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and it was actually, oh yeah, and I was actually I told them to stay upstairs. This is being recorded already. So I told them that they told us that there's nothing we can do. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna focus on cancer. And I was like, I'm gonna figure out cancer. I'm gonna, I'm gonna make a change in there. So I was very confident, not knowing what cancer really was until I got to grad school. And I was like, wow, no, I can't figure this out by myself. So, so in graduate school, I studied lymphoma, which is another type of blood cancer, and was studying the molecular pathways like BCL2, which is a apoptotic or cell death, like your skin cells. You have how you have the webbing in your fingers. That is one of those apoptotic events when you're coming up in utero. And so I did that, and that was very fun, and in graduate school. And so I have my PhD in cancer biology. So one of the things that, so it's a natural pathway. So then I was like, okay, let me do a postdoc. And there's some more stories I go back into, but I want to just get the whole spectrum. And I go back and give a couple interesting notes. I did a postdoc, and I wanted to do that high risk, high reward. So Anika and Chris, if you have to have a high risk, high reward, and just one that'll work. All right. so I had a high risk, high reward. And it was really cool. I was getting radioactive isotopes from Russia, which is really cool. It's like you get radioactive isotopes from Russia. So I was going to attach those to a antibody that we created from a mouse. We created a mouse in silico. So you have the computer, transfect it into mice. Transfect into to insect cells, and then go from insect cells into mice, and then from mice into to bring it up into humans, and then link them to this this linker that we designed, and then attach that to a radioactive isotope. As you might assume, that's a lot of steps, and they have to work before this works. And so I did, and from undergrad and graduate school, my undergrad boss said, he was like, man, you have golden hands because all your experiments always work, right? So I didn't really fail in research, right? And this is the first time I failed in research. And I was a postdoc, and I'm like, it's devastating. I was like, this is not working. So I was like, after 2 years, I was like, bump that. I'm going to medical school. So I did go to medical school. I went to Drexel University, and I went to Fair State University for my undergrad, Wayne State University School of Medicine for my graduate degree, and then Fox Chase Cancer Center in Philadelphia for my postdoc. So I went to medical school for a year, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go through another 10 years of my life before I actually started doing anything. And I was like, I already have a degree, so I'm just going to, go and actually do something in my life and actually try to figure out how to help people. And so this is where I was like, okay. And I was like, and I got married at that point. I was, above 30. So I was like, all right, I don't want to be 50 before I even like get a paycheck. so I decided to do, anyhow, so then I went to, I got married, moved to New York. I actually taught at City College in New York. So so I was like, yay. And when I was there, this is one of those things that that changed from what I was doing to where I'm at now. I was teaching this course for it's like computer literacy, and also it was like teaching these folks for GED, right? To just help them get their high school equivalents. And this one lady said, I said, what's 3 minus 5? And she said, you can't do that. I'm like, huh? And she was like 40. I'm like, huh? And she's like, you can't do that. And I was like, well, you can, but what's more important is why do you think you can't do that, right? And so that right there was like, okay, education is key, right? And from there, honestly, that's where my real passion, right? Because it wasn't really during my postdoc, as Chris is doing right now. I was doing cell culture, and I was like, man, I can't really talk to cells. Like, I mean, I did sing to them and everything. I was like, they don't really talk back. It's not really that, like, I mean, they're fun and all, they grow, but I can't really talk to them. They don't talk back. So it's like, I'm a very outgoing person. I'm very, so I was like, I need to like talk to people. I like interacting with people. So that's just like, well, let me start teaching. So I went to City College. And then when I found that, I was like, well, something's wrong with our education system. And so I said, okay. So then one of my friends told me, you should try teaching in China. I was like, what? Like, that's not the vacation spot right there. Like, I don't hear people like, yeah, let me go vacation in China. Nothing wrong with it. But I was like, all right, let me try it. So I went to China I was there for 3 years, and it was fascinating. And what I learned is that, so one of the things that what I would suggest is being able to explain what you're trying to explain to a fifth grader, right? So they understand what's going on. And I was teaching medical courses, medical science courses in China. And so you can just basically subtract like 5 years from the actual age, and that's their like mental age, because it's like everything's very structured there, to where like they tell you when to get up, when to eat, when to nap, and when to sleep. So there's bells, like literal bells that would go off and tell you what to do. And so, and they would turn your lights off at 10. I mean, not lights, they turn your electricity off at 10. So you can't like, that was it. Yeah, make sure you charge up. So after 3 years there, I started thinking, I was like, oh, this is, I was like, I got kind of patriotic. I said, I don't want to teach these kids how to beat my kids. Had one child at the time. So I came back to America and went to the National Science Foundation. And that was a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship. And I didn't even realize it was like the fellowship to get in. Like it is the best fellowship that's recognized everywhere. And I should have realized that, because it was like a 9-month process to get accepted. I literally had a baby applying for this position, the position I had. And so I was there, and I was studying education and things like that. And so, and from there, I was talking to researchers and faculty members at underrepresented or minority serving institutions, or HBCUs. And they said, hey, there's no money for us in government. I'm like, what? I just looked at the budget this morning. I know it is. So it's an FYI just to you too, Anika and Chris. You guys should reach out to me, because what I do as a day job, I talk to the government and get funding to the researchers. And we can do it within like 90 days, which if you're in research, that 90 days to get funding is unheard of, because it just doesn't happen, right? It takes like a year plus. So what I do is, the relationships and things like that. So for example, this is what could happen. This is my daily job. Anika and Chris would say, they would call me, because Anika, you're what university are you? Cornell. Okay, so Cornell, and then Chris is at Cornell. No.
Harvard.
Okay, so the biggest thing is, so say if they wanted to collaborate. So Anika's Cornell, Chris at Harvard, but you have to have a minority serving institution as the lead. You're like, why is that? Because typically, minority serving institutions, HBCUs, Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, which is CCNY, they don't have the proper or the techniques. I looked at Chris, he was wearing some black gloves, right? And I was like, yeah, those some nice gloves, right? Some people, they don't have they don't have all the, and I was on fellowships through my last position was a fellowship. So I didn't have to worry about money, right? I just buy whatever I wanted to buy. And so, so typically what people think, even in government, they say, well, the minors over HBCU, they can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, they can. Like, here's the position, or here's the people who has the expertise. So essentially, Chris and Anika, they would say, okay, we have a experiment, epigenetics, and we partner with Howard, and then we go to, say, for example, NIH, and we say, here, they can collaborate together. They say, yes, good. And then they write up a contract, and then they go forth within like what could be within like 30 days. And the interesting thing is, like, now that I'm in government and working with government, the numbers are very different. Like, so in graduate school, you know, it's like $50,000, $100,000. Like we don't get up for less than like $1 million. So, I got a phone call from the Air Force, and it's like, hey, we have a project that we want to do, and it's 2.2 million. I'm like, all right, cool. Not that gets me excited. 2.2 million, I can do that. So that was able to get people together from Florida International University. So that's what I do right now. So let's give you just a few. I know it's like 5 minutes left. I'll just give you a few just stories of adversity, and it will play a role with Anika and Chris as well. So at every stage in life, there was naysayers. And I'm not saying like, no, you can't do it. I'm talking people saying, when I was in graduate school, they said, I was like, I'm gonna get done in 4 years. I was like, no, you can't. You party too much. I'm sorry. You go out and have fun too much. And you're never in lab. I was like, I am. I'm in lab at 6 a.m. And then when y'all roll in at 10, and I'm out at 3. I was like, you leave too early. Okay. And so I just kept my head to the ground. So I'm gonna do my work. And the biggest thing is to graduate. I made it very clear with my mentor. I said, look, if I do this and this, I'm done. And I was like, so no matter when, because I had a 5-year fellowship and I graduated in 4. And so he's like, yeah, sure. If you get all your work done in a year, you can leave. I'm like, are you sure? Let's put that in writing, right? So 2 years later, I was like, hey, I'm done. And he's like, well, hold on. You still got a whole another year. I'm like, nope, that's what you said. And I was like, it's in writing. I'm out. And prior to that, with collaborations, my advisor versus my mentor. My advisor, who signs up for my work, he actually had somebody working on similar work that I was doing, and like 3 postdocs, tech, and it was just me working on mine. And so he was like, I'm like, well, if you publish yours first, mine will be a Me Too paper. And he was like, oh no, I'm like, you can't do that. So what happened was I talked to my mentor. He was like, look, he was very calm. You just have to, let's just see what happens. And, we can't make him not, he can't not publish it. So luckily I sent mine off. Mine was published, and then his got rejected because, it was the same thing. And I was like, whew. And also this postdoc was presenting data. I'm like, that's mine right there. That's my figure. That's my figure. He's like, oh no. This is the advisor, the advisor. I'm not gonna say his name because it's being recorded. His advisor is that's his data. I'm like, and I was the one presenting, so I just put on my computer. I was like, see, this is the full data. This is what it is. This is my data. And so those are like adverse things that you really will come in contact with. I mean, like, for real. And so my name got put on that publication, not because they wanted to, it's because I caught them. So for Anika and Chris, in terms of graduating, you have to be laser focused and have an end goal. Like, this is what I need to do to be done. Because unfortunately, once you get your degree, no one really cares. And what I mean by that is no one's going to say, okay, when you get your full-time job, even if so unless it's exactly in research that you're doing right now, like the skills that you need is more what's important, not the actual work. But in order to get the skills, you have to do the work, right? And so when you get done, they're not gonna they're gonna say, okay, you have a PhD from Cornell, a PhD from Harvard, and then after some time, like where you get it from doesn't even matter, right? I don't typically say I have a PhD from cancer biology in School of Medicine, Wayne State University, and it was in live home research. I like that's the first time I said that like in 10 years. So, but the important thing is how you use that, right? You guys are depending on what school, like those are really great schools, and so you can leverage that to beginning your career, and then that's how you get build a further your career and relationships. Um, so one last story. I know. So can I have one more story? Looks like 2 minutes.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So, and one of the stories like that, and if there's undergraduates on the call, an undergrad, my biochemistry teacher, she told me, she was like, I was like, I think I want to be a doctor, I want to be a PhD or MD, and she was like, that's a pipe dream. You can't be a doctor. You're too you don't focus in and all that. I'm like, okay. So when I have my my interviews for graduate school, I put the interview on the date of her class. Again, these are not things, I'm not recommending this at all. You should not do that because I just, and it was pretty obvious that I was missing because this is one of those long laboratory classes, biochemistry lab classes, and it was like 9 of us in the class, and I was the only black person. So I was the only black person in my entire undergrad. I was the only black person in grad school. I'm sorry, there's one person in grad school, one black person every 4 years. And again, I went back and talked to my schools about this, like, wait, what's going on? And there's only, in the fellowship, there's only 3 black people out of like 248. So, so I went there and I said, and I got to, I did my interview for graduate school, and I got in, and of course I came back the next day, next week in class, and they're like, somebody was missing from class last week. And then my friend was like, yeah, he just got into graduate school. And I was like, so that's where your friends, right? Your friends are really important, right? Your support system, okay? It can be family, it can be friends, it can be people like Fanuel. I mean, we've been talking about things that, I met him. I have no idea how I met him, like at least 4 years ago. And we're still talking, right? We're still talking. It's really about relationships. And I'm sure that Anika and Chris, we're gonna be talking, like, because hey, I know things that can get you guys money, right? And we're talking about, millions and billions of dollars. Like we're talking about, like, we're like at, I'm looking at, people write checks for $5 million, not a big deal in the realm that I'm in. So it's about relationships. And you will face adversity, and you will be in a laboratory at, at noon on a Saturday, but you got to go forward and figure out how you get to do things. So that leads me back to the first thing I said. You have to do things that make you happy, right? And if it's research makes you happy, and the type of research that makes you happy, because there's gonna be days when you're in the lab on a Saturday, you can be like, it's not gonna work, but you still got to move forward, right? Because you're going to get to the end goal, and your end goal may change. So what I'm doing now, I love it, because it's like, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. I can educate people. I can educate people, as in like the people who don't know how to get funding, and I can educate the people who are giving the funding. I gave talks on implicit bias, right? So giving the funding. So this is what I really want to do, and I get to talk to people when they talk back. So it's not the sales anymore. See? So this is, so I would suggest to anyone that you really understand just who you are as a person, right? And what makes you happy, and what makes you want to move forward, because that's the best way to really to be successful, right? And the whole imposter syndrome that Anika was talking about, that, I mean, if you're there, even if you're not there, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to be there. Like, you're there. So there's and it's this is the stress thing she's talking about. It's really about, it's all these negative things that's put out there, but they're not necessarily true. And this is why it makes a passion for what I do. And speaking to both of you guys and Fatty Well, I was looking at him like, man, this dude is successful. Like, Fatty Well is, I'm like, man, I'm not doing nothing compared to him. So I had imposter syndrome compared to him, right? I'm like, wait, okay, let me just learn from him. Let me talk to him. Let me keep that relationship going, right? And with Chris and Anika, it's the same thing. You know, like, you guys are doing amazing things. So you can learn from people versus having an imposter syndrome. So I'll leave it there. And
that's fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your journeys. With respect to time, I do want to kind of ask you, I guess, one question to summarize everything. This idea of the scientific journey is not leading one to a specific destination, like one destination. Okay, I think as Dr. Arnold was saying, the skill sets you're developing, right? These are things that you can take into a variety of pathways. Okay, whatever destination that you seek, and it may change over time, right? So, Anika, if I can start with you in terms of just, you are now in G4, you know, as you're thinking ahead, right? What's in the horizon for you? And I'll then ask the same question to Chris, and then Dr. Arnold, you can finish us up with your journey so far and where to after this. Okay, so Anika, why don't you start?
Okay, I would really like to graduate within the next 2.5 years. That would be nice. And after I graduate, I'm not sure. So I don't think I want to stay in academia. I love doing bench work. I love doing research, but I can't see myself as being a PI or someone who leads a lab. Just because I think at one point you stop doing bench work and you take on a more administrative role, which I don't think is for me. What I've realized just from my experiences in doing outreach and science education and being a part of a bunch of mentorship programs as I've gone through grad school in the past few years, I've realized that what I really enjoy is talking about science with other people. And that's not always, limited to talking about science with my scientific peers. What I really enjoy is talking about science with people who don't really know a lot about science. I think I have the most fun then, because not only do they, I guess, learn from me, I learn a lot from them. I get asked a lot of questions where I kind of realize, like, maybe I'm not as well-rounded of a scientist as I should be, because when you're doing a PhD, you get so bogged down in one small area of research and you know everything about it, but you kind of start to forget to know other things. And so I really enjoy that I learn a lot from interacting with people who aren't in science. And so I think in the future, I would very much like to go into a career that's very focused on, teaching and science education. I don't really mind if it's in a formal setting or an informal setting. I've done both, and I really enjoy both of them. So I think that is what I'm seeing on the horizon for me.
Okay, thank you, Anika. Chris, how about you? What is your thinking?
A lot of echoing off of Anika, but I would also like to graduate in the next 2.5 years. Also, Anika, I did scrap my project in the summer, so I'm pretty much starting fresh too.
We're the same person. We're the same person.
Yes, that is so true. So I definitely have to play a catch up, but I do want to say there is something to starting a project when you're first a graduate student to starting it as a later graduate student. You feel like you can do things more focused and efficiently, that it's not so much of time loss. So I think we'll be okay. But after I get my PhD, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently because I haven't really nailed it down. I do love being immersed in the science, and I like talking to scientists. But like Anika, I don't like the getting caught in a niche of one project and one track mind, or the administrative parts of things, of kind of at some point being in an office and sitting down and not being at the bench. Uh, and I also do just like talking to people and educating them about different realms of science and playing a role in all these different areas. And I'm not sure where that will take me. Some ideas I've floated around is maybe becoming a life science consultant, so I can help guide scientific projects and learn a lot. Or yeah, like a sort of big pipe dream is to sort of have some sort of like be a part of some sort of privatized funding that allows me to have the creative freedom and funds to just fund and do whatever I want to do, ethically and in conjunction with academic scientists, of course. But yeah, not sure where that'll be yet.
Great, and that's totally fine, right? The
It is.
unknown is an excitement too. Dr. Arnold, what are your thoughts?
So first I want to say, these type of engagements, I was thinking like, well, both of you guys in 2.5 years can reach out to me and I can hire you. Because I've hired like 6 people, six of my friends. And because now that I'm in position, why not? You know, other people do it. So keep that in mind. And then for Anika, the learning in informal and formal settings, I know a person at National Science Foundation where you can get funded to do that. So again, these are very this is the fun part. So interesting question, Fanuel, that you asked me. My boss asked me the same question, right? He was like, he's like, you're very ambitious. Do you want my job? I was like, maybe, I don't know. And the little sidetrack, one of the things that what I did is I've done other things too. So I was a DJ at one point, DJing electronic music. I was a bartender at one point. This is all after I had my degree. Like, so I was just doing whatever, all right? And so now, and actually I do have, I have my own company as well, my own private company. That's for, it's our Dream Fit Solutions with an S.com. And that's for helping people understand what their mission and vision is and how to apply that. And so one, I mean, that's my personal business. I want to keep that going. And then for my my day job, my boss actually let me have creative freedom to create things internally here. So I'm like, she talked last week. I was like, I could be like the CEO of this new thing that we're building. So it's very open, and we just see what it takes, and basically whatever I do, I want to be able to provide opportunities for folks who may not have it, and to bridge those gaps. And one last thing I'll say is stress management. Stress management. All right. So even if you're early in your career, if you're high school, if you're at the I just keep I love to say if you're on the lab on a Saturday, you know, stress management, right? So last thing I'll say is like the way I deal with stress, even now, is I build Legos. So this here is a Lego. This is a Bugatti Lego, right? And so of course you have a little bag in there. So no matter what you do, because you're gonna have stress. So the stress management and things will kind of fall into place.
That's fantastic. Thank you to all three of you for sharing your insights. I think these engagements will continue these conversations. Yeah, literally today was just a starter. I encourage others to please visit our journal, Journal of Stories in Science, where there's a diversity of narratives you can explore. And I think the points that you've all raised, the diversity of pathways, I think this is something that we want to continue to inspire the young generation to know that these journeys they're taking in science can take them in so many different ways, right? So many different paths, and some of which we don't even know yet, right? Things are opening up all the time, and the journeys that Dr. Arnold has, what he's doing now is something that you don't learn about necessarily in graduate school, but he's discovered this over time, right? And so I think for me, it's that passion to showcase the the immense power of a journey in science and where it could take you, wherever your passions are. So with that, thank you so much.
Anybody can reach out to me. Reach out on LinkedIn, but put a note in there because you get random people. I'm like, I'm not going to accept that person. So put a note in there. Reach out to me, and people love talking about themselves. So you can reach out to anybody and ask them about themselves. That's the way that you get people to answer. You say, can you tell me about this? So reach out to me and reach out to anybody else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.